The Pure Drive 98 has long been the bastard child of Babolat's lineup, left alone to writhe in the shadows cast by its big brothers, the Pure Strike 98 and the almighty Pure Aero 98. The source of its loneliness was its paradoxical nature. Who needs a more controlled Pure Drive? The entire point of the Pure Drive line is power, making the Pure Drive 98 feel like a watered-down version, a Diet Coke to the Pure Drive's Coke. So for 2025, Babolat has made some pretty big changes to the Pure Drive 98 to carve out a stronger identity for their least loved frame. Now we've got a 20th cross, though I may have skipped it for this most recent string job. They've also changed the mold, tapering this classic Pure Drive beam into more of a box beam towards the upper hoop. The Pure Drive 98 has gone from a neutered power frame to a juiced up control stick, at least on paper. The launch angle is far lower than the previous model, encouraging the user to hit much flatter with more blade-like targeting. The hitting feel is also so much more solid. Gone is this tinny, brassy, hollow hitting feel that led to really jarring off-center contact that we found with the Pure Drive VS and the update to the 98. Instead, it's got a much deeper hitting sound with an extremely solid impact feel. The Pure Drive just begs you to play aggressive tennis. You really have to swing out to overcome this lower launch angle, but when you do, you'll find yourself rewarded with a heavy, penetrating ball. That is, as long as you hit the sweet spot. The problem with the Pure Drive 98 is that these control-oriented changes have really reduced the size of the sweet spot to a P. The box-beamed upper hoop, which kind of begins at this 3 and 9 o'clock, means you get nothing in this up-top hitting area, which goes against the recent trends we've seen in the V-cores, the booms, and the gravities. And beyond that, I personally really struggled to get a consistent swing feel out of my personal sample. For whatever reason, my copy felt like there was a ton of extra weight lagging down the frame in the upper throat, maybe like where the bridge is or the lower Babolat stripes. It was a really weird feeling. But I am saying specifically my copy because I did try Jonas Tennis Nerd's Pure Drive 98 when we hit at Tennis Warehouse, and I thought his swung quite a bit smoother. That said, the solidity of the hitting feel and the purity I got on contact from the few balls where I actually did hit the sweet spot really left me wanting to figure out how to use this racket. So first I tried putting weight up into the hoop. I tried 12 o'clock, I tried 10 and 2 o'clock to really try to pull that sweet spot up higher, get some more easy power and more natural forgiveness from this frame. This did definitely help on neutral balls, but the swing feel still felt slow and clunky.
I can't accelerate it.
I did try adding some weight in the handle because the stock balance point's actually pretty high. 325 and a 305 gram stick is above average. Usually it's 320 or 315, like the Pure Aero 98 is at 315. But even with that tail weight, I did keep on running into walls. I also tried a bunch of different string setups, firmer setups like Sync or Tour by Diamond Rough, to softer setups like Tourline O Toro and their new gut-like prototype. But in the end, they all kind of felt the same. Going softer didn't really make the frame feel more forgiving, and going stiffer just didn't really help me get more control. I continuously ran into situations where I'd set up for one shot, hit it perfectly, and then on the next shot feel like my inputs were the exact same, only to see that ball fly like 3 feet out. And then on other balls, I would set up perfectly and feel like it's the exact same as before, and then I'd fluff the ball into the bottom of the net. Okay, so I've just looked at these two clips of me clearly not getting into full position and attempting to use racket head speed to bail out of my terrible shot making. And usually that honestly works pretty well. That's one of the reasons my forehand is so wristy. It's because I'm out of position all the time and I need to bail myself out constantly. There are lots of rackets where I actually can bail myself out very reliably, and this one just really punished me. So here's what I think has happened with the Pure Drive 98. Number one, they went for a box beam to increase the control but also drive some interest, because we know the enthusiast community loves a good box beam. Number two, that box beam reduced the power so much that they had to increase the stiffness. Apparently it's been jacked up to 73 unstrung, which I don't know for sure, but it definitely feels firm, so I would believe it. Number three, they've had to add a bunch of dampening tech to make that really high 73 RA stiffness comfortable enough for most players. And because I think Babolat has really figured out how to dampen rackets in a way which make them feel solid and direct instead of mushy and muted, you don't quite realize how muted the hitting feel actually is. To me, the hitting feel is actually pretty nice on contact, and that creates a problem. It feels nice pretty much all the time, even though the sweet spot is tiny. You cannot feel where you hit the ball on the strings. You cannot feel if you hit the sweet spot. You cannot feel if you hit it off center. And that's shown by how string sensitive this frame is, or how string insensitive it is. I tried 4 different setups at varying tensions from 48 to 55, and honestly, I couldn't really tell a big difference between them. Obviously, yeah, I could feel that the higher tension was more boardy, the lower tension was a little more plush, but I couldn't feel the nuances of each string. I couldn't feel the ball grip on a shape string or slide across a round one. I couldn't feel the difference in character between Tour Bite and Toro Toro. And to me, this is the main issue with the Pure Drive 98, because stability, spin, power, control, they're all really nicely balanced. And of course I am annoyed that the swing feel was a bit clunky and slow for my forehand, but it did feel pretty nice on my backhand, and I served just fine with it. And even still, I think I can let the clunkiness go, because having tried Jonas's sample and I found my forehand just fine with it, maybe I just got bad luck with the copy I got. Beyond that, I also understand that some people will like a little bit more weight in the throat. They like that depolarized feel. So I can see that there might be an audience there. But to me, the issue that you just can't solve is that the sweet spot is small, but it's also really poorly defined. So now we're left with the Pure Drive 98 and yet another paradox. The Pure Drive line is Babolat's user-friendly line. It's got a huge sweet spot and it's easy to swing. That's what these frames are known for. The 100 is easy. It's just a quick pick up and play. And the Pure Drive line is where they house their oversized options like the Pure Drive 107 and the 110. But for some reason, they've sandwiched their most demanding frame, the Pure Drive 98, into this line. I honestly think even the Pure Strike 97 is easier to use than this new Pure Drive 98, and I don't think that makes a lot of sense from a marketing perspective. Unfortunately, I think Babolat's Pure Drive 98 might be even more lost than it used to be, and I don't even know what they need to do to fix it at this point. Simply put, this racket is hard to swing and it has a small sweet spot. That's just not what a Pure Drive should be. The only real idea that I have is going to like a 315mm balance point that could give the racket a little bit more of a precise tip feel, which would justify its more controlled nature. Or they could maybe go to like a tour level spec with a more full weight distribution at like 315 grams. I think that would make the frame handle this high stiffness so they wouldn't have to mute it as much. But honestly, I'm not sure if this racket is going to find an audience. I'm curious to see which players end up adopting and switching to it, because I'm sure that will happen in some numbers. I can see a world where blade users who want a little bit more power and stiffness actually do go to this, or T-Fight 305 ISO users who want something less clubby but still like that 325mm balance point. They might find some solace in this PD, but at this point it is at the bottom of my personal list for recommendations. At the end of the day, the Pure Drive 98 is an interesting frame. I will give it that. It's pretty weird, and if you are curious about it, I do have affiliate links to Tennis Warehouse, Tennis Warehouse Europe, and Tennis Warehouse Only, because actually this is the best frame ever made.